The Great Australian Dream refers to the ideal that home ownership will deliver a better life through housing security. This dream began to gain recognition after World War II, but is still used in advertisement campaigns today and as an Australian bragging point.
Nobody matches us when it comes to home ownership, and we've always done it.
In the 1950s and 60s, it is estimated that around 90% of Australians owned the home they lived in, dramatically surpassing the rates of the United Kingdom and the USA's ownership. Ray White Real Estate capitalised on this with a campaign entitled The Great Australian Dream, targeting the ideal that Australians should own a house as part of Australian tradition.
We're Ray White. Welcome to the Great Australian Dream.
Though this ideal and goal may appear to be self-made, an article by Leslie Johnson discusses the fact that the Great Australian Dream is rather the result of social and cultural processes, and that the dream is the result of marketing campaigns and a historical need for a housing revolution, quoted by Bekker as a direct outcome of the housing policies pursued by the Australian federal and state governments and the institutional arrangements created for providing housing. The Australian dream has created an idolised norm that posits home ownership as an indicator of stability and success. This norm has become institutionalised in contemporary society and functions as an agent of socialisation that creates unrealistic expectations of home ownership for young Australians.
Houses get bigger and prices explode.
Are we all done? All finished?
As the dream become a nightmare.
The expectations of Australia's youth do not correlate with the reality of the housing market. This disparity is explicated in Merton's reference group theory, particularly in his exploration of when individuals take the values or standards of other individuals and groups as a comparative frame of reference. As a consequence of the normative implementation of the Australian dream, young Australians who dream for home ownership posit themselves in comparison to older generations who achieved the Australian dream during the mid-20th century housing boom. However, expectations set by the housing boom are often unattainable in contemporary society, and so there exists a disparity between institutionalised norms and the realities of the contemporary housing market. In the past 2 decades, housing prices in Melbourne on average have increased by $300,000 and in Sydney $500,000. This rate of housing inflation is not relative to inflation of income, and as a result, Australia's price-to-income ratio index shows a 78% increase between 1980 and 2015, yet 94% of young Australians still envision owning a home by the age of 30. Sam Stover's relative deprivation theory, which was developed by Merton, can be used to describe the perceived injustice individuals feel when they do not achieve the success of their reference group. The housing market produces relative deprivation for young Australians who wish to attain the Australian dream. For Merton's functionalism, relative deprivation is a site of social dysfunction.
Robert Merton developed his strain theory of deviance in the 1930s to describe how individuals interact with societal goals and the means by which they achieve these goals. For this video, we used real-world examples of people responding to the goal of owning a home, the key element of the Great Australian Dream, and the means by which they achieve them. It is our hope that each of these examples goes some way to explain how Merton's theory has many real-world applications.
I can't stress how amazing the financial security it gives you, because saving is so hard, but it's allowed me to save so much money. My pay comes in and 3/4 of it straight into saving. So it's kind of the first time in my life, like approaching 30, I can look at my bank and go, look, I feel really comfortable in myself.
We spoke with Joe and Lonnie Harrison just yesterday. Their cabin was on 10 acres in Madisonville. Here are some pictures of it. They bought it last spring, and on Friday, Lonnie Harrison said that he went to visit his property and cabin, and when he pulled up, he noticed the lock to his gate was broken, and just beyond that gate, his cabin was gone.
I've rented in share places almost all my life. I never really had an aspiration for home ownership, and I'm fairly comfortable with that.
He's lived alone on the highways of the East Coast for a quarter of a century without ever seeking a job, shelter, money or medical help, surviving only on what other people throw out.
We set out to create an organisation, not simply an intentional community, and that organisation was to support the creation of a just, non-violent, sustainable world. Had 3 main aims or areas of work.